All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am Is There No One Else, and the video I'm bringing you today, we are going to talk about the impenetrable changes for the Greymoor PTS and how it impacts PvP in no CP and in CP. This video is going to be a little bit longer. Hopefully I can make it as in-depth and as interesting as possible. I might throw in a few dad jokes if I can come up with something on the fly, but my goal is to give you the information you need and just talk about what the changes are. Now, as is always the case with PTS stuff, guys, these things are subject to change. We're on week 2 of the PTS. We got a couple more weeks at least of the PTS. So nothing's set in stone. But with that being said, let's dive into it. Now, the first thing you're going to see is they have changed the impenetrable value. This came out in week 1 of the PTS. I think normal gold impen traits currently on live are like 258 or 259. It's 250 something if I remember correctly. They have now nerfed it down to 172. So each impenetrable armor piece is now much lower than what it traditionally has been in the past. And so that's a pretty substantial nerf. Now, you guys see I'm wearing Divines. And I'm going to go into the CP tree really quick, and I'm going to take out my resistant impen. So I'm going to take this out. What they also did in week 2 of the PTS is they introduced a base impen value. So now you guys can see from traditional methods, I'm wearing no impen, but if we look at my character sheet, the baseline critical resistance value is 1350. So regardless of what gear you wear, what you have in your CP, your character starts at 1350 critical resistance. Now, if we put on some impen gear, wanted to talk a little bit about this in CP, and we'll do CP and all of its implications, and then we'll go into no CP. Well, I think we'll try and break it up that way. But if I put it on all my impen gear, traditionally for the last year or so, I have been running 3,000 impen on all my characters. I have roughly this many points into resistant. I run impen on my bodies pieces, and I get to around 3,000, 3050, something like that. And so if we do this, now you see I'm wearing 7 impen with the normal resistance that I have and with the 1350, even with the body piece nerfs, we gain roughly 1,000 critical resistance from Harrowstorm to Greymoor, which is a substantial amount. A lot of people are a little confused about what critical resistance is, so I'm going to dive into that really quickly, and I'm going to just kind of talk about it. But a critical strike in PvP is 50% more damage on that attack. So let's say I do a light attack, and my light attack does 1,000 damage because I am a high damage beast. Okay, well, 1,000's a lot, guys. Just go with me on this. If I'm doing 1,000 non-crit and all I have is a 50% crit modifier, and I crit, that means that 1,000 light attack will hit for 1,500. Now, these are also amplified through passives. Nightblades and Templars have 10% more critical damage attached onto it, and it just stacks on. So instead of 50% more damage, it's now 60%. So instead of 1,000 base attack going to 1,500, it goes to 1,600 as a Nightblade. We also have access, if you play CP, we also have critical values. So Elfborn increases your critical damage and healing. You also have precise strikes. So you can have modifiers in here, which is also additive. So if we're a Nightblade, we have 60% plus this is 24%. So I have 84% crit. Now, if we run channeled focus, that's 94%. If we run the Shadow Mundus with no Divines, that's another 10%, that's 104. If we were a Khajiit, that's another 10%. All these things start to add up. So if you had a 100% crit modifier, your 1,000 base attack when you crit does 2,000 damage. Are we all tracking here? So that's how crit works in this game. What critical resistance does is it nullifies what your critical value does. So if you hit me, and you have a 50% crit modifier. If I have roughly 3,300 impen, if I have 3,300 impen, I reduce that critical value from 50% down to 0. So what that means is if you have 1,000 light attack, because you're also a high damage beast, and you critically strike, if I'm wearing 3,300 impen, your critical strike will still only do 1,000 damage because I'm completely nullifying what that critical value is. And so I've had quite a few people off and on over the years on my channel talk about critical value and how when you have 3k crit resistance, it doesn't matter, like nobody's going to do any critical damage to you, which is not true. It's not true. Especially if you're playing in CP, there's a lot of modifiers. You can run the Shadow Mundus, like I said. You can run Minor Force, which is what Channeled Acceleration is, or Trap Beast. You can run, you can be a Khajiit and have 10%. You also have sets like Sench's Bite or Archer's Mind that also have 10% values, and all this critical value stacks a lot. Christopher ESO goes through this all the time on his builds where he's running like Archer's Mind and Sench, and he's basically stacking critical values because people don't have enough impen to deal with his critical strike modifier. So if you are dealing with somebody with a 50% crit modifier, yes, 3300 impen works. But as we know, a Nightblade has 60%, a Templar has 60%. Anybody in PvP that is doing a damage dealing build is going to have their base 50% plus, 81 precise strikes is pretty high, but let's say it's 20, they're going to have 70% crit value. And so it takes roughly, for every 10%, it's about 660 impen. So if 330 is 50%, just under 4k is 60% crit modifier. So this crit resistance basically means that base Nightblades and base Templars, I reduce their impen down to 0. That's what that means. That before CP comes into play, before Minor Force, before the Shadow Mundus, all those other sorts of things. So critical resistance is valuable, and it's often slept on quite a bit because people, I don't think, really understand exactly how it functions. So hopefully I explained that well and I didn't bore you to death. If I did, you can wake up now, and then we can move on to the next part. So critical resistance is huge. Burst is how you kill people in PvP, and critical strikes are an aspect of burst. If you line up 2 critical strikes on somebody, that can make it the difference between taking somebody to 30% health and completely nuking their health bar and having them respawn at the nearest keep. It's very important. And so now that we've talked a little bit about impen and how we're getting more of it, what that means for us is all of us are going to be naturally more tanky. If we want to just run 7 impen, we are going to just be more tanky in CP. Now, I'll go into no CP here in a minute, but I wanted to talk about this as well. If we don't want this, like let's say you're happy with your 3k crit resistance, you feel tanky enough and you want to augment in other ways, you can do that. You can go into your CP tree, and now we can allocate these points. If we want to drop down to 3000 impen like what we normally run, we can take these points out of resistant and we can put them somewhere else in our CP tree to make our build more well-rounded or viable, or we can shore up weaknesses that we traditionally have because now we have some of that freedom. If we want to drop down to 3000 and we want to run different traits, I'm just going to throw on divines really quick just to take off impen, just as an example. But I have 3, 4, 5. This is not a build, by the way. This is definitely not a build. So we have 6 divines right now, and you see I'm back down to my normal around 3000 crit resist. And so what this means is if you choose to, and you still want to be around your 3000 critical resist and you don't want 4000 like what I'm going to do, you can do that, and now you can augment your build. You can run, instead of divines, you could run infused, you could run well fitted, you could run sturdy. If you're a sword and born build, maybe you want to run sturdy and have more block. If you're a bow build like this character, maybe you want more well fitted so you can dodge roll a little bit more. Maybe you're a healer, or you're a Templar and you want to, or a mag DK and you want increased healing. Maybe you run the Ritual Mundus and you increase your healing. Maybe you're really sad about Bloodspawn because Bloodspawn was your favorite set and you want more resistances. You can run the Divine trait with the Lady Mundus. Regardless, my point when I'm saying this is there's multiple different ways to survive in this game. You can dodge incoming attacks, you can block incoming attacks, or you can heal through damage. And these impen changes are either going to allow us to nullify critical resistance more, or we're going to be able to dodge more attacks, block more attacks, or heal through attacks better. So I was looking at this a little bit ago, but I have 6 impen right now. If I put on the Ritual Mundus, I just wanted to show this as an example. I'm not saying that this is a thing, but I just wanted to show this to you guys. With 6 impen traits, my healing done is increased by 14%. They nerfed healing in PvP by 20%. This offsets a huge portion of the healing nerf by just re-slotting and reallocating are healing. And so a lot of people have been talking about how this is going to be a high damage patch and how and people aren't going to be able to survive and all these other sorts of things. And that's bullshit. You know, hopefully I showed through this entire thing. If you play in CP, you are going to have more maneuverability with your specific build to defend yourself better. And that's kind of the cool part about this next patch is you're not handicapped to running 5, 6, 7 impen. You can now switch your impen around and you can run a trait that can either give you more attack damage, like if you're wearing the Warrior Mundus, you know, and you want more attack damage, you can amplify that with the Divine Mundus Stones. If you want more max stats, you can run Infuse with Tri-Stats or whatever, and you can have more stats. If you want more recovery, you could even run Invigorating at this point. You know, I'm not saying run Invigorating, I'm just saying that that's a trait that, you know, maybe you might want to run. And so for as much damage as stun is going to give, for as much damage as, you know, and lack of healing that they're giving us, they're also giving us this increased critical resistance value that is going to make all of our characters naturally, you know, more tanky, or allow us to build into ways to be more tanky. So now I'm going to go into no CP, and we're going to remove our CP amount, and I'm going to show you guys what that is there as well, because it also has pretty substantial ramifications in no CP. So we take our points out of our CP tree, and traditionally in Battlegrounds I'm running around 1400. I think with 7 impen, I think I have like 14 or 1500 impen in Battlegrounds, if I remember correctly. Now we have 1522 if I put on all my impen pieces. Once again, not a build. We're not running like one piece of everything. That's not how this works, but I just want to throw the impen on and give you guys an idea for what you're going to be at in no CP for those of us that enjoy it, or, you know, want to play it because it works. We're now going to be at 2554 base critical resistance in no CP. And so a lot of people are going to be very, very tanky in no CP, more tanky than they traditionally are. You know, people die in no CP, but this critical resistance value is pretty substantial. You know, this is a substantial amount, and it's going to make one-piece sets like the Malakath ring, the 25%, even more valuable. That 1350 base crit resist with 7 impen in no CP, it's like we don't have as many modifiers. Like I talked about before, I have a 60% modifier now as a Nightblade, you know, in no CP. If I run Channeled Acceleration, I now have 70. That's it. You know, that's it. I don't get another 20% via, or 24% like I'm running. You know, I don't have a 24% more crit modifier. I only have 60, maybe 70%, and a big chunk of it is now being taken away with critical resistance. And so you're going to see a lot of people choose in no CP, in my opinion. They're going to choose to go from a crit value, like they're going to forego their crit damage for something like Malakath, because the 25% flat value is probably going to give more on a lot of builds in no CP. And this is going to have to be something I test, of course, but I apologize for the long video. Hopefully I explain it. Hopefully I explain this as well as possible, but people are going to be naturally tankier, you know, and you can say like, oh, well, you can just maneuver stuff around. People are going to be more tanky, you know, in one way or another, whether, like I said, whether it's dodging attacks, blocking attacks, whatever. Like, people are just going to not, in some ways, they're not going to take as much damage as they currently are, and sets like stun and whatever are going to offset that. And so it's just interesting to talk about. You know, I wanted to bring this up because, you know, the damage sets are always getting yelled at, but if we keep yelling at the damage sets and we don't talk about, you know, how we're going to get more tanky, you know, there's no middle ground. So I will be posting the new damage stun stuff as well this week. I did a lot of testing last night as well. If you guys, you know, found this video helpful and enjoyable for you, and you want to pay attention, you know, you want to follow along as I'm learning all the new ins and outs of what PvP is going to be like in Greymoor, and you want to stay tuned to that, please feel free to follow my channel. I try to do these updates. I try to go through and test everything and provide that information for you guys. I'm doing it anyways. You know, I'm going to do it anyways because I want to know, and it doesn't hurt me at all to do videos to show you guys, you know, what I'm figuring out. So also it helps me. You know, if I point something out and I get something wrong, which you always do on initial tests, you guys are like, hey, you know, what about this? I just came out with a video yesterday where I was talking about Venomous Smite, and I tested it on a non-moving test dummy, and people were like, yeah, that moves, that follows people around, which is completely different from what I said in my test. And, you know, I didn't test it in that way, and I made a mistake, and, you know, now I know something better for it, and I can make improvements. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions or comments, please provide it in the section below. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.